Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the ZeroPoint tonight. This is going to be the first module of many for talks about Dero, and we will have many members of the community come in, just request speaking privileges, and if you have anything to say, I would be more than happy to give you the time to say it. I just plan to be here to kind of coast things along. Maybe bring up some talking points as they're needed. I have Asylum here with me. He's also going to be talking and speaking as well. So if you have any questions for Asylum, just shout him out. Sure, he will definitely give you a bit of time to answer them today. Hey, Secret, I see you joining here. We got Cryptoid in. There's a lot of people coming in. Dero Cats, thank you so much for coming out. Just request speaking privileges, like I said, if you want to come up and talk. So tonight I'm pretty venerated to be able to host the first module here, and it's going to be pretty on the fly. I don't really have anything in particular that I want to dive into right away, so the floor is totally open. If any of you guys wanted to bring anything up, or feel free. We're speaking on X. Still kind of weird saying that personally. To kind of venture out a little bit, I know we tend to be tailored to closed organized spaces like Discord and Matrix, because those are usually more productive when you're trying to solve problems or teach. Whereas out here on X, it's more like a town square, and we can speak to people, and you just got to be aware of the other people that are trying to do the same thing right around us, and hopefully the people that come to listen up are just as interested in privacy as we are. So if not, maybe they will be. Hey Joy, I see that you popped in. Glad to have you out. Hopefully I'm coming through clear for everybody. Nelbert's here. Shouts out to Nelbert. Seen you a bit earlier, speaking in the socials. Such a great contributor to the space. I've been following this guy's work secretly for a long time. All right, so I've already covered the spot of we're venturing out. We're talking. We're out in the open space out here on X. I guess I would like to bring up personally why privacy is needed. That's what Dero, to me, is the most fascinating point of Dero is the privacy point. That can be argued, and it should be. But it's private by default, and that's so huge. And I guess for me, I realize why we need privacy in our day-to-day lives, but to bring it out to the masses is going to be a little harder, because the majority of society seem to be socialites. They like for people to see when they do things. I don't know. Maybe that's just my worldview on it, but it tends to be that way. When you're out and about, people wear nice things. They go to nice places for that status. So, we got to try to take that mindset and bring it to the idea that privacy is a basic human right, and no amount of status should be traded for that. Let's see. I'm going to join as co-host here. There we go. And we're all right. Yes, sir. We got Tech Leaks joining in as well. I love to hear Tech Leaks speak. Yeah, you're very fascinating with your point of view. Feel free to take the floor at any time, my man Tech Leaks. And I also appreciate you stepping in and giving your inputs the other day. I was able to listen back at that, and it was wonderful to hear.
Well, thank you. I was glad that I could provide, let's say, a different point of view from what the narrative was in that space. Because I think, as you said, like privacy is a human right, and I think that's the core future of Dero. I don't think Dero is about going viral or is about viral content. I think Dero is about growing with as awareness about privacy grows, growing as people educate themselves more about their fundamental human right, privacy, which is fundamental for freedom. Because without privacy, you cannot, right? You are not free. You are not free to disagree. You are not free. You are scared to not comply with something crazy, with a crazy nonsensical request. You are scared to resist something. So lack of privacy opens the door to tyranny, and people, I think, in our generation, let's say millennials, were raised to this mindset that privacy is wrong, privacy is shady, and I probably, if we study history of our modern times, is there are waves. One generation values privacy, the next is conditioned to what you look at it with suspicious eyes, because things go back and forth. There are pushbacks from one side, from the surveillance forces, and then privacy forces reemerges, reaction, and action, and so on and so forth. And I think it's extremely important to emphasize. I mean, I can't personally imagine a discussion on Dero without privacy. It's not just another coin to buy and sell and price go up to wait for price. I mean, it's all about privacy, and it's the only thing that matters. And the rest, like price, and these are other things that will emerge with time, that the market will discover their value or adoption or user experience and so. But I don't think we should think about there like we think of other coins, where we focus on beautiful interfaces, which matter, of course, but that's not the point, because privacy is a key component in user experience and also in user interface. And also because it's like I was saying the other day, like you might have the most comfortable bed in the world, but what if your walls are made of glass? Can you sleep? I mean, what if you have got no door? Because that's what it is like to operate without privacy. And this is all Dero is about. And it's very important that we keep talking. And I think as enthusiasts of Dero, it's key that we educate others, that we become a force also for good in the world, in educating others, in raising awareness about these issues, and participating in these discussions on privacy, on legislation, for example, that are happening in the US, in the EU, in the European Union, and also in the United Kingdom. So yeah, basically that's I think it's key to tie the two things together, to not forget the importance of privacy that as the base layer of any discussion on there, just like homomorphic encryption on there.
Absolutely. You said a mouthful there, and I would like to speak to a couple of points there that I found pretty important and could resonate with. Just the fact that you mentioned that we, as a community, are growing, and we're growing in a way that is fear free. It's so true. There's not a single point in time that I remember looking into the Dero community and seeing bud from the community itself. It's always been positive oriented and focused on the future. So that was very well said. And I took note of you saying the phrase having a comfy bed with glass walls, because I'd never heard that before, and it really stuck with me, because that's what a lot of the projects that you see can be described as. They have these very nice beds, which you can equate to the venture capitalists that have invested in the project, or the viral marketing that has been poured into the project. That's really nice, comfortable bed to sleep in. But what's your foundation looking like when when you look around, you look up and see glass walls, you're in trouble. Bitcoin, we're looking at you. But anyway, I wanted to definitely bring that one back up too. Thank you so much for that input. I'm going to use that moving forward as well. Yeah, beautiful user interface is something that is being worked on. We have artists like Asylum and Joy Raptor that are setting the bar really high So I could see where it would kind of be daunting for newcomers to come in and want to even work work in this. I'm just kidding. But yeah, the unstoppable dApp that everybody's talking about is going to be backed by that beautiful user experience and interface. And with time, the diamond is formed. So we just put a little pressure and keep the heat up, and I'm sure that dApp will emerge in and of itself and be unstoppable, like everybody talks about. And with that being said, what are some ideas for? Do you guys have any? I wish I was a coder because I have several ideas that I would like to be able to put on Dero eyes. I don't know how. Don't leave it to me to tokenize a word. But yeah, what would you guys add to the app suggestions? We have a nice selection of wallets already with G45 has brought out one from, he's like a community dev that's put up a community wallet. The actual foundation has brought out Ingram, which is the one that I use more than any of them now. I was an old command line interface guy, but Ingram's just so much easier, and we all give way to ease, don't we? We have, what else do we have out here? Don't let me miss anything. Dreams.
There's also the people building the dexes and everything like that, but it looks like Joy Raptor's raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing any of that.
Oh, yeah.
Joy.
Hi there. No problem. Just enjoying being here with all these wonderful brains, and pretty much everyone here. Like, I just love absorbing this stuff. On what Tex Leak was saying, I kind of want to give. So, like, anyone that's familiar with my posts knows that I'm pretty darn militant about privacy. And, like, I have kind of these two tracks going in my head. There's the public and private. So the private track is, what do people need to have a good foundation? And the public track is, what will it take to get people to use that foundation? So, for instance, like a bed without windows, that's good for showing the foundation. We need privacy at the foundational level. But as far as like UI and sex appeal, those sorts of things, I kind of see that kind of like a car, where maybe privacy is the engine, but the body is the UI. And there are things that look like they will go really fast, and more people will buy those, even if they don't perform as well. And if something looks ugly as homemade lie, people are going to go against their better interests to have that. So to quote Blaise Pascal again, we must talk like other people, but not think like other people. In the back of our minds. Sorry, my little daughter, she's enjoying dancing and she wants something. So I think she wanted a sip of water I was holding. But anyway, yeah, that's baby raptor right there. So like, as far as like what would be better for humanity? Having like a privacy app that is foundational. Its foundation is letting people know about privacy and educating people on privacy, and maybe it has a reach of 100,000 people. Or an app, let's say the scale of Facebook, but completely end-to-end encrypted, maybe homomorphically encrypted, and most of the users don't even know they're using security. I would say the latter is actually in some ways better for mankind. And of course, these things can get down to like, well, you could have ratios, like, because if people don't know about privacy, they could easily be duped later. So education is important. I'm not discounting that. But in general, you're not at all. It's kind of like kicking against the goats. Try to educate people on privacy, but some people, that will be the first thing you introduce them to, and other personality types, other character types, that's going to be the last thing. And I think it's just realistic that we're dealing with different personality types. We're dealing with different temperaments, and people are going to respond very differently, and we've got to be able to target all of them.
Very well said there. I agree with you. We have to be able to speak to all of the mindsets. I was actually having a candid conversation with my younger brother last night. Just about I was telling him how I was going to be doing an upcoming talk here tonight, and he was asking me questions. And I'm not the type of person that parades around my hobbies. I tend to be introverted, so I wait for those moments to arrive, and I jumped on it like a panther and started just trying to get as much into his ears about Dira as I could. And I started noticing the barriers to entry there, because one of his first major things was, well, when you get your seed key generated, what program, like what records that, what stops that from being recorded? And I'm like, that's a good question. And so there's so many different points and that people will come to you from, and you have to be ready to approach them at all levels. And just thinking about the looks of a powerful dApp, like you were saying, versus having that one that's end-to-end encrypted, I definitely agree with you on the latter as well. It's going to be way more impactful to society to have something that they can come to eventually, and it be end-to-end encrypted. Like the old adage, if you build it, they will come. A second here, I'm going to grab a sip of water.
Yeah, no problem. I was also thinking, when it comes to things like, private keys and stuff like that, people, they don't tend to understand that, that seed key, that's yours. You lose it, it's gone. Or if your computer or system's already compromised, gone. People don't seem to want to take their own security into their own hands. That's why we have to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to adopt newer technologies. And yeah, that's always going to be a hurdle. It's been a hurdle in the IT industry for as long as I can remember, and probably before that. I mean, you have to think how many systems have been hacked because they were using default usernames and passwords, and we're talking about sensitive systems. I mean, like the Target hack that happened a couple of years ago was because they had I forget exactly what the password was, but it was like login admin and the password was admin. Like, if you're going to secure your stuff like that, you're only secure as you make it. And for a large, like Fortune 50 or Fortune 500, I don't know how big Target is, for a large company like that to make an oversight, I can see why people are nervous and like to leave their stuff on exchanges and stuff like that. But I think that's also why, in general, people should be looking away from exchanges and trying to find true peer-to-peer ways of making transactions and trades. I know that was a little bit off subject, but I think that's where things should be headed.
I want to add something to that, if I may. I think, user interfaces are important, and there is this huge barrier to entry. But in the picture I see a much bigger barrier, caused by the narrative that accompanies privacy, which is all about, like, only the other day I saw a couple of tweets in my mentions of some guy saying that all the tax dodgers and all the drug dealers and all the money launderers care about privacy and nobody else. And I think this is the real barrier here. We are far from that saturation point where, let's say, we have absorbed all the tech-savvy people, and now let's improve our user interfaces so we can appeal even, to the wider masses. But I think a lot of tech-savvy people are locked in living these bubbles where privacy is still seen as shady because of all the communication, these narratives they are exposed to on a regular basis on the news and by lawmakers, left and right, and then by people, by all the Twitter shills or minions, how I want to call them, and this is a real problem, I think. I think other privacy coins haven't worked much in this direction because they seemed, it's fine, you want to spend your money in hookers and drugs, and that's okay, that's your problem, but that's not what privacy is about. It's much bigger than that. It's about freedom, and most people most people, when they think of privacy, unfortunately today, the first thing they think is, also I'll be free to spend it on drugs and stuff. No, that's not what privacy is. Privacy is about you being private and feeling safe to disagree, because it's not like you'll get fired. It's not like you'll get ostracized. You'll get stigmatized by the majority of people because your opinion is not that of the majority. Not because you get, let's say, not promoted or demoted and stuff like that. So I think in this narrative, we manages to penetrate, let's say, the discourse on privacy, then that will already be like, we remove a lot of the friction that we see that is not much about user interfaces. Because maybe in Bitcoin, you can say that, yes, we need better user experience. We need, this long strings of numbers and letters is really, is really slowing. We have reached that point, like the population of users is so saturated that a small improvement in user interface, like for example, if you add usernames and stuff like that, the handles, then that might improve, that might bring a lot more people. But when it comes to privacy, I think the real barrier right now is that people, there is a lot of ignorance when it comes to it, and a lot of misinformation, which is willful, which is designed there to shift public opinion to being against it. Yeah, pretty much.
And actually, just a short statement to add to that. Back when, the Patriot Act was released in the United States, and, people found out about PRISM, they were like, oh, well, I don't have anything to hide, so it's fine if all my emails are being read and things of that nature. But you ask the same people, well, if you don't have anything to hide, do you mind if, the police just come in your house and walk around whenever they feel like it? And everyone will say no. And the point is everybody has the right to privacy and everybody wants their privacy. It's just for some reason in the digital realm, some people think that that's not the same, when really it's one of the same.
I absolutely agree.
It's interesting also to think about, where does this thought form come from? I actually myself used to possess this exact thought form, like, well, I'm super innocent, so I don't care. Is that was that embedded in us in social engineering? Maybe Asylum, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, there's a whole other layer of people being followed around on the internet too, just being hooked on one piece of data that somebody gets their hands on, and
Yeah,
it isn't right. There's something seriously wrong with this whole concept. It's not a question of people's ideas. It's a reality that nobody's talking about.
Yeah, it's not just necessarily that there's certain people that have access to privileged information. It's just that information isn't even privileged anymore.
To the point that if somebody coerces you to let one piece of information about you out into the world, now the entire planet has access to it, and all the people that you don't want to have access to it, and they demand it from you. It's just, it's inhuman. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. And it made me think about a bit of research that I did. I can't remember how long ago now, but it was talking about how much of the internet was indexed by Google. And at the time, they were going into how only 3% of the known internet is being indexed. And, I thought, wow, that's crazy. And surely they've grown that by then. We could maybe even say 10% now is what I was getting from OpenAI when I was doing a thought experiment. So 10% of known internet is being indexed by Google, and everything is built to use that Google index. Facebook, probably X, you name it. They're all using that index. So that bubble has already been built, and people are already living inside of it. And unless you salt your data, which people don't even know the terminology of anymore, you're giving it right to that bubble, and it can be examined. Yeah, because it's already indexed. It's there. It's already been examined.
Well, for the just for the benefit of people who don't understand what salting data is, could you give us an example?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, you used alias and everything that you did. You made yourself 60, 70 years old when they asked you your age. You would set your language to a foreign language just to throw off the program, and so you could do some coding behind the scenes, different stuff like that. You never give your real information anywhere. Um, and now they make you. No, that's what actually kicked me off of the popular Facebook. I was using an alias and somebody reported me because of one of the posts that I made. And they were like, yeah, we don't believe you are this alias here. So can we get some government ID to prove that you're this alias here? And I was like, middle fingers, I'm out of here. So yeah, salt your data, use aliases.
Yeah, connect your wallet too so we can see everything in your bank.
Which is what they're doing with the Ethereum Gnosis wallet. That's the whole point of, prepaid card or debit card, which is the whole point of it. They basically want to map all the identities of these people, of their users, into the blockchain with the lie of the convenience of converting your coins into fiat money so you can go and spend it everywhere. And I think, like there's been this debate on privacy, which I think is unnecessarily over-engineered. Like it is overcomplicated to make things like they speak about behavioral surplus. They speak about how the action economy. They speak, from the academic point of view, it's they try to make it so complicated so that ordinary people feel, I believe, not competent enough to have an opinion on it when it's really easy, because surveillance it boils down to scaring people off from disagreeing with the majority. So it amplifies the majority, and it makes minorities shrink to the point where they are completely negligible, or they are completely, can be treated in the most inhuman ways, like it happened to some of my French minorities in the recent crisis. And this is the whole point of surveillance. This is the whole problem. The whole issue with surveillance is really easy, and even though it's presented as a very complex problem, it's really very easy because it chokes freedom of speech, freedom of will, and so on, and creates this economy of the inevitable, this dictatorship of the no alternative, like Waldo was saying, with these platforms that ask you for a government ID or you can't use it anymore. Or they ask you for all sorts of information, either agree to some crazy terms of service or you can't use it anymore. Or you use some deprecated form of service that is good for nothing. And breaking out of this, I think, is key, and creating awareness of these issues is key. There is homomorphic encryption is very important, and I think by playing with Zero, by being educated and playing, people at the same time can see the light on a lot of these issues at the same time.
And actually, again, I'd just like to add a little bit to your point. There's been a huge example of that recently in Canada, where they had the protests with the truckers. They froze their bank accounts, and people tried to send them Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin transactions were just tracked because Bitcoin's transparent, and those transactions still got blocked. So it's not like this is something that isn't already happening. I mean, it's already happened to stifle freedom of speech within the past few years.
To add on to that, a lot of people don't know, but last week there were protests all over Canada that were probably 5 to 10 times larger than the trucker protests, and the rest of the world hardly even heard about them because of media blackouts.
I didn't hear about it.
Exactly.
I didn't hear about it either.
Wow. And something else that came out, one of the things that came out this week, I mean, at least for me, I learned it this week, is that basically someone posted a study, or I think published a report on the levels of censorship on ETH. And it came out that nowadays, like 5 out of 6 of Ethereum's largest block builders, validators, are basically complying with OFAC sanctions. So they blackmail, for example, transactions from Tornado Cash. So this was the worst case scenario, and I think everyone downplayed this as impossible, unlikely to go in that direction in need, but it is effectively happening. And with BlackRock taking over most of miners, I mean, where is this headed? I mean, it's obvious in which direction this is going.
I actually, just with Tornado Cash in particular, in my personal opinion, they were not targeted just because they were developing privacy technology. They were doing extra things. However, regardless of why you think Tornado Cash was targeted, it's a great excuse for them to use in order to continue, I guess, justifying certain policies. So when things like that go down, it doesn't help anybody. But I do see their point with why the Tornado Cash developers were possibly responsible for some of the things that happened. However, whether or not that's the case, it made a great case for them to say, hey, this is why you shouldn't have privacy. And that's the part that bothers me.
That's it.
Yeah, they use.
Go ahead, Joey.
It is short. They use the low-hanging fruit to pivot to the higher fruit. It's like they're climbing up branches, and so they're gonna go with the scammiest scams, and they're gonna use those as examples, and then they're gonna find things that are kind of like that, but maybe just a little bit more legit until they basically climb their way up the top of the utility pyramid, and they're able to control everything.
And this is the problem with people saying, use privacy Monero, so you don't have to pay you don't have to pay taxes, or when they say, for example, use Monero so that you can buy, because I mean, of course there is a tax problem, okay, but that's a separate problem. It's separate from privacy. It's like you want to solve that's different, not by privacy is something completely different, that is much bigger, much more important, much more fundamental. And that is much more important than even taxes, because it's a matter of, it's a fundamental right. You basically are undermining human life, like civil life, civil liberties, and so on. So that's mixing these two things creates so much noise, and then that noise is perfect for them to advance and to take and more of the space of this oxygen out of privacy.
100%. I've always thought that myself. I didn't understand why people would. It's regardless of your point of view on what taxes are and whether or not they're constitutional or legal or right in any way. That's really beside the point of the fact that you have the right to privacy. And that's what people should really be focusing on, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, we have to get out of the elementary mindset as a society that privacy is only reserved for using the restroom or, bedroom affairs. Like it needs to be interactions in every interaction, or we're going to give it to the bubble so that they can examine it and use it to build the system stronger against us,
And I just heard the dinner bell, but I just want to just toss this out real quick. Privacy is not only for us, the people who seek privacy, but it actually protects like all parties. I had a just quick story. This past week, I had my debit card turned off. My bank sent me a text message notification that I was not allowed to make transactions until I spoke with one of the representatives, and had to go through recent transactions that I had done. And so privacy is really important because it protects that person, some random human being on planet Earth that I don't know anything about and have no reason to be talking to them about my financial affairs. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that privacy is not only just for us ourselves, but it's like for all of us, because I don't need to know what you guys have as a balance and the transactions you do. Anyway, I really appreciate being able to chat. I got to jump to dinner. So see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by, man. And actually, kind of to add to that too, it's not like privacy is anything new as far as finance goes, right? Like, for example, let's just say it was the 1970s. A lot of people dealt in cash. You had cash, You made money doing your legitimate business in cash. You reported how much cash you made to the IRS. You paid your taxes on it. And that was perfectly fine. Now, for some reason, the narrative is, well, if we can't see everything that you're doing as you do it, then somehow that's some sort of avoiding their systems or something like that. So they're trying to frame simple financial privacy that's already existed for years, decades, and saying that that is something that people should be worried about, and it's only for criminals. That was literally part of our society for hundreds of years. So I guess I just don't understand why they can twist that same narrative and make it seem like it's something dangerous.
And to build on the story of the banks a little more too, I remembered a couple of days ago there was an article floating around that J.P. Morgan and Chase were issuing statements out to their customers that they could no longer do cryptocurrency transactions, and if they wanted to do that, then they should find another bank. And in tandem to that, I think the CEO of Coinbase came out and urged its users to stop banking with J.P. Morgan and Chase. And you get this whole little back and forth public squabble between the two, but it just plays into the fact that people shouldn't know what your transactions are being spent on to tell you what, to cut them on and off. And our financial systems here in the States are already doing it.
If you told people that, hey, crypto's the future, and the way that you participate in crypto is that you take your bank account and you post it onto the internet for the entire planet to see, who would want that? Nobody.
Worse than what we had before.
I think though it's like some people recognize this opportunity because obviously there is a huge opportunity here because this ignorance, this giant blind spot on privacy, so creates appeal, for opportunists, like for people, for example, like, these that create so-called backdoor technology. Like there have been a lot of these, for example, impenetrable phones or that were sold and marketed as such, and then they turned out to have backdoors that got people killed or got people jailed, like in countries like Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, in the Far East, in the East, and so on and so forth. So I think, and this is something, I mean, another important topic, because a lot of these energies are drained by projects that are crooked at the base, like that are built by people that don't believe in privacy, that don't have our understanding of privacy, that are maybe pro-surveillance, but seeing privacy an opportunity, and at the same time, so they build something that can be marketed as private, but when it's really not private, like, for example, also with secret network. So I think this is why also education is very important, and homomorphic encryption is very important, and encryption itself. And the other day, someone was tweeting, like, how does homomorphic encryption work? Is there a master key? Like, who holds the master key? Like, it's important, for example, to understand there is no master key in homomorphic encryption because each user has the private key of its own data, but then is transmitted in encrypted state and so on and so forth. And in this space, creating it will be key, fundamental, I think, for Zero and for all privacy enthusiasts to weed out all these toxic companies, toxic people. I mean, or let's say dishonest and that are just opportunists trying to monetize the trend without caring about delivering the technology that is desperately needed by people today.
And also, a lot of people seem to just undermine the importance of layer one privacy versus layer two. What I like to say is, layer one privacy is if you were to see a store and go into the store and you can see all the transactions that are happening, we'll call that layer two. People grabbing their products and going through checkout. You can see what's happening, but it's like it's done by a bunch of ghosts. You don't know who anybody is. It's just products floating around. Layer two privacy is kind of like if you were to set up surveillance on the front of a store and you can't see inside the store, but you could still see everybody who's coming in and out, and you can see that they have bags with things in them. And it kind of defeats the purpose of privacy if anybody who's watching the entrance to the store can see who's going in and out and what they have and what's in their wallet, right? So not only is it just about homomorphic encryption being a good solution for not having a centralized encryption method, but it's also on layer one, which makes it basically the only way to actually protect your privacy, in my personal opinion. If it's not on layer one, it's not private.
Just to add on to your store analogy there, if you spend resources to acquire privacy on a layer 2, you can only use that privacy in the store that you bought it in. You can't walk out the door with it. That's a pretty significant point that people need to understand.
Absolutely.
Which makes it also a red flag. Like, you get profiled as a user because you might be, you might get targeted for that reason because you entered that store when there is no privacy by default. Like, then becomes what they call behavioral surplus, because now you are telling me that you care about privacy. So if you live in a society of uneducated people where people think privacy is suspicious, then it's justifiable for the government to come after you, or to just start or auditing or targeting you, or like ostracizing you in many different ways just for seeking privacy. Like what's happening, for example, with Tornado Cash users. Like, maybe someone just needs privacy, but because of how Tornado Cash was marketed, probably, like, I'm not very, or what Crypto was saying, saying earlier, now you get associated with those people. So you are profiled as such, as suspicious.
Well, it's not necessarily just governments either. It's society as a whole, right? I mean, it's the planet as a whole. The planet has the access to the ledger. So, it could be your neighbor, it could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be somebody at work. It's an invasion of privacy on a level that's unprecedented.
And the last people you want to have that is big tech, with the bubbles and prisons that they're building already around society because of the data. That just fathoms. It blows me away. It's unfathomable that this data is almost infinite that they are able to reap from us now through all of these open platform places that don't adhere to giving us our privacy at a fundamental level. They can make predictions. I've seen. They're not quite ready to predict markets like crypto yet, but they're making predictions in other places, and they're pretty accurate. So,
Edward Snowden gave a talk on that exact subject at Consensus last year, and it was telltale. He didn't give a lot of information, but he was basically talking about, hey, with all this data harvesting that they're doing, and it was a blockchain conference. He said they start to predict behaviors, and that's exactly what they're using it for, because they have a treasure trove data lakes. And what a data lake is, for anybody who doesn't know, is, it's just a huge repository of data that they're not sure if it's useful yet, but maybe in the future it could be. And humans aren't good at going through that, but AI is. And that's exactly what AI is being used for. And if you don't think that AI is being used for things like that, well, then you're just being a little naive, because why would a large corporation or a large government entity not want to take all this data they've been harvesting for all these years and make something useful? And I see Joy Raptor has his hand up again. Just go for it, man. You don't have to raise your hand.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so man, there's we're coming to a point. I think you'd said a while back about how it used to be normal for people just to report their income, and they had default privacy. Now, I think that if in any culture, in any generation, just because of human nature, if they had the technology back then, they would probably be using it in the same way. But we're at an interesting point where there's like this sort of weird power dynamic where this stuff is accessible to it's like, I don't know, if you were to chart it, it's like it goes towards infinity. So my ability to understand information coming in is linear, and the information going out about me is parabolic, and also that a technology able to digest that sort of information into something usable, as you say, is also going parabolic. And the only solution is to it's to arm people, but because they're still kind of moving in the linear world, they're not realizing that this exponential information thing is going to be there. It's hard to change people's minds. I kind of got a little bit disorganized with my thoughts. But go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe the term isn't necessarily even arm people, just remove the information. Because if the information isn't there to be sorted through in the first place, then
yes,
there's no vector to. Yeah, go ahead. I'm talking over you now.
Oh no, that's fine. Part of it's a bit of lag too, I'm sure. But yeah, so I mean, there is a reason why the U.S. military considered encryption to be arms trading. If you were to send encryption over, because it is a great equalizer. In the same way, if every single person in a country was like had semi-automatic rifle and they had like 10 years of training to know how to use it, well, semi-automatic rifles are going to be, they're going to be like butter knives, right? It's like everyone's got one. And, like right now, people could try to invade my home with a butter knife. But, well, I've got a butter knife too. So, they won't do that. So in the same way, encryption, as you guys all know, is a great equalizer in that it in a way it arms people, but it arms them in a way of like it puts a cloak over them, cloak of protection, a hedge of protection, that sort of thing.
That also kind of reminds me of where that actually comes from. So a lot of people probably aren't familiar with where like the Supreme Court and stuff came on that type of decision with encryption. There was networking technology back in, I believe it was the late 80s or early 90s, and there was a hardware chip that the U.S. government wanted to require on all networking equipment. And that was supposed to be used to protect communication. But what ends up happening when you use one person that has the master key for said encryption is you actually create a big security backdoor that anybody can use. Anybody can find that security backdoor, and with enough, enough knowledge and enough, I guess, will to break it. And so, by trying to control encryption, you're basically creating vulnerabilities for people, because you're saying, hey, nobody should be able to read this but me being, let's say, a government entity that's supposed to keep you safe. Well, as soon as somebody else exploits that backdoor, well, now everybody can read it again. So, yeah, that whole outlawing of encryption went to the Supreme Court because of that hardware chip and that style of surveillance. I always found that interesting. I also find it interesting not a lot of people know about that particular case, I guess, because it was very important for communications online, and a lot of people just have no idea that even happened.
Something about data lakes that you said, which strike me, because I think intentionally people create confusion about the prediction of behaviors, because I think we are past the stage of prediction, because surveillance, in the beginning it predicts, but once there is awareness of surveillance, then surveillance starts to shape behavior. Like, it's no longer prediction if you shape it. It's like people feel forced to act in a certain way, to opt for something, not because you predict. So it's not like you are predicting it, you are influencing it, and you are pushing them, forcing them, cornering them into by exploiting this fear of surveillance, or by exploiting other things like social engineering and so on and so forth. So you are now shaping, you are creating this conformity, like you are crushing dissent of any type. You are guilting privacy initiatives and so on. So in the end, this undermines the whole even democratic world. And I think this is how privacy comes out on top. There is only one way. It has to be political. People have to start caring, because I mean, I speak often of governments because governments are a reflection of what people believe, because people know what the government does and they tolerate it because they don't care, because they don't consider it to be an issue. But it's only if people start caring that then governments start changing the way they operate. So the only way out I see is, but it's like in the end, this is a political issue where the solution, yes, I mean, we need tools, and Zero provided this tool that is uniquely powerful, but in the end, it will require, I mean, for real change, and when we will see Zero really shine, I think, is when we will see some political inertia against the surveillance and pro privacy, and I think we're still quite far from there.
Well, 100% agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
a long road.
That's beautiful.
There's something that kind of pertains to this that I wanted to read, and it definitely hops on what TechLeaks is talking about, and it comes from the book Ponce's 1500s, but it's talking about justice and might, and it's kind of contrasting them. It says, it is right that what is just should be obeyed, but it is necessary that what is strongest should be obeyed. Justice without might is helpless. Might without justice is tyrannical. Justice without might is gainsaid because there are always offenders, while might without justice is condemned. We must then combine justice and might, and for this end, make what is just strong, or what is strong just. But the problem with that is that justice is subject to dispute, whereas might is easily recognized. So we cannot give might to justice, because might has gainsaid justice and has declared that she herself is the one that's just. And thus, being unable to make what is just strong, we have made what is strong just. And that's basically where our government is right now. And just a little bit more. No doubt equity of goods is just, but being unable to cause might to obey justice, men have made it just to obey might. Unable to strengthen justice, they have justified might, so that the just and the strong should unite, and there should be peace. The peace being the sovereign good, which is great until when there's competition between nations. And then bringing this back to Darrow, encryption actually does something different. They didn't have this technology in the 1500s. It is actually able to bring strength to justice, not like a pinpoint where you're able to control everyone to do the good thing, but like with the broad stroke, it makes it so that the majority of people are going to do just regular honest affairs of trying to bring home bread and stuff like that. And the con men and the corrupt politicians, they're always going to have privacy. But now everyone else can have privacy too. And by doing that, it just nudges the needle enough so that they don't, that the corrupt politicians, the con men and the thugs don't have the same edge that they once did. And that's kind of for the first time in history, like that's a technological thing. The problem, and going back to what TechLeaks was saying, is trying to get it into people's head, to change people's hearts to actually value their freedom. And to do it in a way that maybe coming at it from a marketing perspective gets them to value a product and then see that it gives you freedom. And then, so there's multiple vectors to go to that. But yeah, that's just kind of some thoughts that I had, and the concept, it comes from Pascal's Pensées 298 is the reference.
I also see that we have another speaker that hasn't been speaking yet. Apologize, I don't see your whole name, but Crowbay.
Oh, it's Crowbay actually. You can call me Crow.
All right, sounds good, Crow. Did you have anything that you wanted to add right now, or?
Oh yes. It's been a wonderful conversation. We've been hearing some pretty insane thoughts about encryption, and especially when TL spoke that it's basically surveillance that forces human elicits certain types of human behavior which otherwise people would not have uh, shown. And I think privacy privacy is a fundamental right. It goes without saying that nobody should be concerned what I do or what you do. But uh, I it's like um, when people take our data and they use it to train models of large language models, and they call it revolution. I have a problem with that because that is not a revolution per se. If today, if today we create protocols that do not have any data leaks, then these LLMs would automatically cease to exist. It's because of predatory gathering of data by companies like Twitter or Facebook, or primarily server technology. Then servers are primarily backdoor technologies, but there's yet a backdoor to be found on blockchains. And we also do not have a working software to prove that, yes, binaries of data can be transferred over these secure cryptographically enabled networks. And this can prevent data theft and essentially give privacy back to human beings. Uh, it's very convoluted at this stage, and it's too early as well. But we hope that we have many privacy champions across the globe, like the ones that are here right now. And together, I hope we can make a difference. We can make people get complete rights over their privacy and data.
Wonderfully said. I love the username. I'm a big fan of crows. I follow a lot of the crow-related medias, and as an animal, they're actually absolutely fascinating. I want to train one to go and find me certain nicks and trinkets. But yeah, it's nice to have new people come in and speak on the topic of Darrow. And I wanted to ask a question. Oh yeah, you said the book, the name of that book was 298. I really enjoyed that reference. Would like to check a little more into.
So it was actually Blaise Pascal's Pensées, which basically means thoughts, and he's basically one of the biggest super geniuses in history, and he just kind of writes on justice, human suffering, and other things, and they're all just random thoughts that were collected after he died. So it's kind of like an unstructured book, but the reference 298 is when he wrote stuff down. Like, he would just have an idea and he would write it on a canvas, and then he'd draw a line under it. And then once the canvas was filled with these ideas, he would then cut the canvas and put it in bundles. And at the end of a month or an end of a year, he would take out his bundles and he would find ideas that are similar or related, and he would arrange them, and then he would stitch them together. And so when he died, his family basically found all these concepts in literally tatters in various stages of completion, and they all just kind of got bundled together and put into a book. And that book is called His Thoughts.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. I'm gonna definitely give that a little bit more read. That's fascinating the way that it was found too.
I'll post a link in the thread.
To add something to what Crow was saying, like, I think it's important that OpenAI was sued for using stolen data. So basically what revolutionary today means is a new revolutionary way to steal from people, to steal data. Because the first they steal from now from millions or billions of people, users online, like for example, artists, then they create, and they call it AI that uses these patterns to generate new patterns or flat out copies them. And then they start saying that we no longer need artists, no longer need, for example, designers. So they do the same for coders. They go through Stack Overflow, I think, or maybe GitHub, and then they create new lines of code, and we no longer need coders, but it's actually they are basically stealing the work of these people, and they are creating new products that are basically stolen, that are the result of stolen work hours of millions of people around the globe. And this to what privacy does, because basically then this will enrich those few people that are in charge of these technologies of surveillance, and they will repackage it as revolutionary innovation, while impoverishing the rest, while making all these other people poor, and even decreasing their ability to negotiate for a salary, for a job, and so on and so forth, and weakening them. So this is what lack of privacy does in the end. I mean, it concentrates everything, wealth, resources in the top 1%, and then top 0.1%, and then top 0.0.1%, and so on.
Exactly. It kind of concentrates power or consolidates power into the hands of these clown big tech companies. And it's if what they are doing is practically they're stealing our data without our information or without our knowledge. But if we do the same thing, right? If we sail the high seas, right? If we take the torrent route, they get triggered, right? They call for DMCA takedowns and God knows what. Now, the point being that when you remember back in the days, 1990s, we had, if you were offline, I couldn't message you, right? Because there was no intermediary. It was pure P2P. Way back, I'm talking way back, the days of instant relay chats. And I think the whole architecture today, any chat communication is still built on IRC. FTP, IRC, and all those things. So then when Web 2 came in, it came in with massive backdoors. And these backdoors are the bane of existence today. And blockchains were invented to specifically and categorically eliminate middlemen. And not just eliminate middlemen. They said, okay, you don't trust us, trust the code. Look at the code, read the code, understand the code, and, well, feel free to use it. So there have been a lot of open source pioneers, which we owe our thanks today, but greedy corporations like Microsoft, which is a thief, right? You have AWS, which is also a thief. You basically, all these big techs are thieves. They're low-level IQ scammers. I don't understand the hype that is unduly given to these retards. But coming back to our problem, our existential problem today, we need to figure out a way to transmit data across blockchains. This is our present aim and goal. It is just that blockchains are incredibly hard to configure, and they require a high functioning knowledge about machine language and C++, of course. What the Bitcoin protocol showed us was just a demo. It was a demo protocol. Like, people buying and selling Bitcoins, they're fucking retards. They don't really know what the protocol is all about. It's a pure P2P protocol that demonstrated, okay, you can transmit data in a cryptographically secured way. That's it, period. But it's up to us, the community members, to build protocols, to integrate it into Android. For example, I could call you, I could host the entirety of Twitter on a blockchain network, right? And no data would be leaked. No data would be gathered. We have no data gathering scripts. So once this happens, then as TL said, a massive shift in the way people behave would be visible to the world. And that's what I feel as well. Because people act differently when they're surveilled. People act differently when they're not under surveillance, right? So I think we have a very long way to go, but we would require collaboration. We would require more than collaboration. We would require people of the same frequency, of the same conscience, to make this product, these blockchain-based products, freely available to mankind. Yeah.
I have a surprise for you, Crow. There
Yes, sir.
There is the first blockchain that I've ever heard of that can transmit encrypted data between two wallets trustlessly.
Oh yes, we have been looking at Dero. Me and my team, we really are super impressed with the way Dero works. We also had a few questions to the developers of Dero where we wanted to ask particular challenges that we might encounter. So I've been speaking with Joy as well over these, and I'm glad we found a common space today to talk to. So our end game is to create applications based on Android and eventually make a proper Android-based operating system based off AOSP, Android Open Source Project. And then gradually we can move to true or cryptographically enabled phones. But it's not a big deal creating phones, but it's more of a big deal creating mass use applications on Android. So the beauty of the beauty of Bitcoin or peer-to-peer protocols is it auto scales. We don't have anybody who says that scaling is a problem is because they are using AWS, like Ethereum, right? Or like anything that's built on Ethereum or anything that's built on Solana or Matic or any of these dumb shit coins that run off AWS nodes.
Well, obviously, a blockchain isn't the solution for mass data transmission, but in the example of Dero, you can use transaction payloads for negotiating keys for hooking up streams between users or various different things that I haven't seen anybody exploring yet. So that sounds like a good space for you to latch onto and see where it goes.
Oh yes, sir, absolutely. It would be because we wouldn't be using the blockchain per se to transmit data, but it would be more of a bundle of other open source protocols, for example, LibTalk or yeah. So the way if you go back to the history of proof of work, there was Nick Szabo and Al Finney that wrote a paper where they explained how reusable proof of work tokens could be used to create something called as transparent servers. And we have been working on that model, transparent servers. So where data gets transmitted freely, but in a completely encrypted manner, in bits, and only in bits. Like not the whole file gets transmitted. And that's a quality of BitTorrent, as we know. So yes, it takes I think it will take quite it's a Herculean task. But I'm sure with great minds who can think together, who can work together, I think we should be able to push a product that's beneficial for mankind.
Kurobayashi, I am so excited that you have been dabbling your feet and toes in this community. I'm really excited to see what sort of awesome things can come from that, especially as you start communicating with some of the other builders out here.
Oh yes, I eagerly look forward to as well, sir.
And it reminded me of a meme I seen earlier, something you said about Bitcoin. The early days of Bitcoin was about, separate money from the state and breaking traditional banking and giving privacy as a human right. And today it's, BlackRock buying into it, and we're gonna go up now, boys. That cypherpunk spirit left Bitcoin, but it's a breath of fresh air because it still exists here in Dero. You see it every day. People like us coming together and preaching that privacy is still number one. I just wanted to add that to it. It made me think of it. Glad to have you here. Hope to follow your work very closely.
Thank you. Just a point to add. Yes, you are right. The Bitcoin protocol was supposed to be a cypherpunk protocol, It's a revolution. But I think the way when you read the code, it explicitly states that all nodes are public. And there's a reason why they left the code, they left the nodes to be public. It's just that they said, okay, here's the protocol, here's the demo protocol. Go try building something on it, right? Go try doing something with it. Try using proof of work in various ways and use a figment of imagination to push products out. Yeah, that's basically the Bitcoin protocol, the public nodes history. Yeah.
I wanted to jump in here for a second because I love building conversations, and I love talking about transmitting data over the blockchain. And in my experience using Zero for it, it's such a joy to be able to know that I can transmit up to 128 bytes per transaction. So it's not too difficult to believe that a server could deploy a number of wallets to transmit packets of data every 18 seconds. I don't know to what extent you would want to construct, your tool, but it's very feasible to believe that you could generate a conveyor belt for encrypted data to pass over the Zero communication network. It's really, the more that you work with it, the less it becomes like a cryptocurrency and that there's a passing of zeros and ones between parties. It becomes more like a communication platform that happens to have value exchange involved. And value exchange in that there's amounts, like you can pass integers between parties, which, that's convenient. But really that encrypted payload is really awesome. I'm not going to show my Discord server because I already do that plenty, but there are many different examples of which
Show it.
No, that's what the shill zone's for, bro. So there's many different examples that we've seen in the last couple of months of people taking advantage of that. And that actually there hasn't been. I'm actually one of the only people in the entire community at present who's been publicly demonstrating how to use integrated addresses, how to encrypt data onto the blockchain, and how to transmit orders between parties. Specifically, the gift box is actually one of the coolest use cases that I've gotten the pleasure of, is that when the user gives me their address information, it gets encoded into into the Zero address that I specify. When they pay that address is written onto the blockchain in an encrypted fashion. And as a result, I get it and he gave it to me, and we know that. And so that when I talk to the vendor about their order, I can give it to them. There's no middleman. I received it directly from the customer and I gave it directly to the vendor. And that is how that relationship works. The customer is aware of it, the vendor is aware of it, and they prefer it that way. And so it's totally possible what you're talking about in terms of the transmission of data. It's just a matter of like, how creative do you want to be as a builder, right?
No, absolutely. Because this technology roots predate to 1990. Well, the way before servers actually became a thing, and it's very easy to understand in layman terms. So, for instance, you're running Discord. Well, Discord is a standalone software that you have built, and now if you want to use it to connect people across the globe, you use right now, today, you're using a centralized API on AWS or Digital
100
or
Yep.
right. Yep.
Yeah. So I run my own server out of my own machine, but I use Discord's API, obviously, that's probably running on AWS as an intermediary for private exchange between parties in a public public server.
Yes. So what we figured out was a way to make suppose like the way you are running a private server. Now that private server, essentially, if you're running Web 2 elements, the admin of the server is able to read each and every binary that goes through it.
Yep.
Right. That is our problem. So it should be completely trustless. It should be permissionless.
It should be that way, right? But they don't give me the tool. They don't give me the tools like that. So we all have to and so privacy, as we all know, in a public space, in a public sphere, is a series of concessions. You have to tip your hat to the gentleman and let him know we are doing this to the best of our ability. And when better tools are made, guess what? I love sexy UIs, but you know what? You know what's better than sexy UIs? Sexy APIs. Those are the best things that developers can work with. And so that's what we hope to see in the future. And so I'm really excited to have developers in the space who are interested in privacy, much like I have to deal with every single day. Do I like knowing that I can see everything that I don't see what they're typing, but I get all of the events in Discord. Like that's what I get, but that's what anyone would get if they were staring at the same screen, right? There's nothing really that special about it, but it would be nice if that was encrypted so that I couldn't necessarily be held responsible for everything that's transmitting over the wire. That would be really nice. That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yep, that's
basically it's basically your transparent server, right? You created a server, and then there are people like me, there are people like Joy, there are people like DL who also wish to contribute. Say the Joy has 1 gigabyte of hard disk space. Now Joy cannot necessarily afford a full-blown server like you and me, but Joy says, oh, hey, you know what? I love the protocol, and I would love to dedicate a few gigabytes of my available resources, either through my Android phone or my Linux PC or my Windows PC. All right. Now this contributes to the privacy pool, where it grows the network, it scales up the network. And let us say if Joy's 1 gigabyte was used to facilitate a binary transfer, then Joy gets paid a system of token, a system of saying thank you, Joy, for strengthening the network. And there you go. Here's a few pocket change for you to enjoy. Go buy a beer or go do something. That's what our aim is, because this model is not new. It's basically BitTorrent. Whatever I just spoke is primarily BitTorrent, except in BitTorrent the trackers is a big issue. So you may choose to have private trackers, but even private trackers tend to leak data. They tend to expose your IP address, your MAC ID, your everything, basically. So when you use cryptographic networks like blockchains, we tend to eliminate all these data gathering or doxing scripts. And one can be sure that you are being a ghost on the network.
Well, and that's why to speak to Zero in that regards, like that's why fundamentally the transaction is encrypted, because on some level you have to say, okay, the buck stops here. And that's exactly where that stops. One of the benefits of the Zero blockchain, and there's 3 levels of encryption, right? You're going to have your network encryption, you're going to have your transaction encryption, and you're also going to have your wallet encryption. And those levels of encryption are really beneficial to making sure that users have levels of privacy. And so that on that level, we're really, dude, excited. I'm really excited to see what comes out of that space in the universe. So this is the first time we've met. Like, pleasure's all mine.
Yes, pleasure's all mine too, sir. And then I would like to add, I would like to add that our observation that the way you said 3 layers of security, right? And it's a known fundamental factor that the more layers of security, the slower the transactions start taking place.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily the case with Zero when we're dealing with 18-second transactions. Which, it's funny. I was hearing how, like, we were talking about, like, UI, UX. I beg for someone who's a BTC Maxi to say that as such a good customer, they would sit there at the customer screen waiting for confirmation, just waiting, right? Like waiting for a cup of coffee or whatever. But on Zero, no, it's actually believable. Like you could actually conduct a reasonable transaction with someone in 18 seconds because of that, next block finality, which was, is a really fun topic. In the very next block, that's a valid transaction. And so, correct. I think that what's really exciting about Zero, and I love shilling it. It's my favorite because there's nothing better than it. And so I want to find people who get excited about what it has to offer. And so I'm really, really excited that Nonsensus is going to create a space where privacy is like a main topic. It's like a huge main topic. And so we're all flying out. I mean, there are some of the most important people, I'd say, of my life, some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. We're all going to go get in a space and we're going to talk about the future of the world. And like, that's what we're really excited for. I hope, do you want to come to Nonsensus?
Oh, yeah. We would love to. I've been following Dero. Our team has been following Dero, and we've been analyzing ways to use components of Dero, because Dero is open source as well. And we would try to salvage anything that we can, and we also would love to give Dero some love back. And when it comes to, see, what we are talking here is about trillions of transactions per second across the globe. So it has,
we don't want all of those people. That's actually a really difficult part of this conversation. We don't actually want all of those people.
No.
It's believable. I'm saying it's believable to create payment systems that can facilitate everybody. But if we're talking about network effects, I don't want everybody on my network. That's something that
what Crow's getting at is just more the fact that you can have so many transactions and have them end-to-end encrypted, and how you can integrate them into the blockchain.
Yeah.
Which is a great approach. Especially what he was talking about earlier, with web, and then Web 2 came along, and then SSL, for example. Without SSL, Web 2 is basically useless. So, yeah. But yeah, if you want to come out to Nonsensus, just reach out to me. This is Cryptoid, by the way. I can't actually use both my accounts right now because I'm broadcasting this talk over another channel right now, so I ended up kind of stuck on the Nonsensus one. But if you want to come out, just reach out to me. It's going to be October 31st though, so the clock's already kind of ticking on that on getting there. So just let me know.
Will do, sir. Thank you so much. Will do. It's been lovely talking to you all.
Yeah, I appreciate that tech talk. That was real big boy pantsy. It got nice there, and it's a good way to segue into Nonsensus. A lot of us are going to be kind of shaking off that stigma of everybody places on communities that are based around privacy. We're going to show face and try to do some actual physical talking about this stuff. And it would be great to have you there afterwards, so we can do a little jig and have a drink or something.
Would love to, sir. Yes, would love to.
I was thinking on marketing. Does somebody else have something that some other direction they want to go? I don't want to be stepping on anyone's toes.
Well, I think Waldo was trying to shift the conversation more towards Nonsensus from what he was saying.
Go for it. I'll listen.
Well, as far as Nonsensus goes, my personal opinion is getting everybody into the same room is probably one of the most important things that we can possibly do as a community. Obviously, virtually, this is great and everything with everybody here, but giving everybody the time to talk about everything they want to talk about, provide presentations, and just educate each other, I think that's going to be priceless. And I really think that everybody who shows up at Nonsensus is so dedicated to being there and so dedicated to sharing their knowledge. That's really what the focus should be. And, like versus other blockchain conferences, just being to a couple myself, they all seem like VC pitches. And it's kind of like I was talking to Secret the other day, and he mentioned something, and it was about he's building his business on Zero, right? And we were talking about the fact that so many blockchains try to, or not even blockchains. A lot of them are just quote unquote crypto companies, right? And something that I said a while back that, and I'm sure I stole it from somebody else subconsciously, but don't build a blockchain business. Build your business on blockchain. You know, like Dero, for example, is not a business. That's not what it's here for. However, it's a great tool to use for a business if that's what you choose to use it for. And I think focus like that outside of, hey, why don't you come and here's what our blockchain does, and this is why you should buy it, which seems to be the theme for a lot of these other conferences. I think avoiding that and coming together like we're planning on to, that's the way to move forward.
It seems like what you're talking about is in a lot of places, everyone is coming for one product with a bunch of missions. And here you're saying, hey, I want every one of us to get on the same mission, but have many products. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, when you're talking to me specifically, I'm going to shy away from things like when people say words like products and marketing and this and that, like,
right.
And I know a lot of it's just terminology, and people say products and they mean different things, you know, and marketing and they mean different things. But to me personally, it's when you go back to when Bitcoin was built, what was it built for? It was built to be a utility, and that utility was supposed to bring people a certain level of freedom and a certain amount of privacy and a certain way to break away from the way that things are currently done. And the way that a lot of people tend to launch their project nowadays is a way to integrate it with what is already being done. And I think breaking that mold is really what needs to happen in crypto right now. A lot of people look at crypto as companies and investing in shares. Like, how many times have you heard someone say they bought X amount of shares of some coin? Like, that's not really what's going on here. And I think getting people back to what crypto's about is the important thing right now, especially right now.
To the point that if we continue on at this pace, the existing crypto industry just becomes the banks, and the only real relevant blockchain that still exists in 25 to 30 years that exists right now is basically Zero. So we should probably get started on this stuff.
It's quite funny. You're right, because banks have no business to be in the blockchain space. Blockchains were made specifically to tell the banks, fuck you. Right? So when a bank comes and a bank funds, and then a banking institution like JP Morgan or all these assets, BlackRock, they come and they say, oh yeah, we have taken active interest in blockchain technology. It's a fucking Ponzi. Right? No, you cannot. So blockchains were made to replace fiat. You cannot buy an asset that was specifically meant to replace. So we got to get there. And like you said, once we truly get there, once we truly push protocols that have daily driver utility, I think we can make a change. Yeah.
Also, I think banks love blockchains. Like, it's going to become like they are getting involved. It seems like something, because they are not so much as a competitor as you know, with this new paradigm that is emerging now. They want to put everything on chain, and with the UTXO in transparent chains, that's basically blockchain becomes a surveillance technology. Like, it's no longer decentralized money. It's no longer censorship resistance, because you can, once you have the license changes with all the KYC, you map all individuals to an address and so on. So that becomes a mass surveillance technology. It has nothing to do with censorship resistance or decentralization. It's just a way for you to control people, to surveil them even better. And if you even manage to implement microtransactions there with L2s, then you basically can see everything about what people, how they spend, where they earn, and where they live, and where they travel. and you can pull the plug on anyone around the globe. They don't even need to be in your jurisdiction anymore, because you can freeze that address of this uncomfortable person, and the person can be on the other side of the globe and won't be able to transact anymore. So it's basically a surveillance weapon, and it's like a health baked, like it's not encryption and has nothing to do with it. And I think so. This is another frontier on which this awareness that we're speaking about needs to expand. Like, people need to understand the difference between a surveillance tool and an encrypted layer one and peer-to-peer cache.
Absolutely. Now, that's the thing that's happening with Ethereum, unfortunately. So Vitalik, that idiot, he released something called as privacy pools, and it's essentially a mass surveillance and mass censorship program. And by the way, all these AWS and EVMs, or virtual machines that are hoped to be cryptocurrencies, but they're really not. They're products of the banks. They gather way too much data. Like like if you ever heard about a script called Infura collects all your data, all of it, bar none. It strips you down. And I hate it. I hate it when people even install Trust Wallet or all these wallets. They use MetaMask and they dox themselves. They basically are giving, it's a backdoor. It's a massive backdoor to you. So I think when people today, education is the most fundamental aspect of blockchains and cryptocurrencies, which is missing, quite unfortunately.
Yes, it is. And that reminded me of here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, there didn't hear you.
Mentioned Infura, like in Dero, like every node has this piece of tech called Gnomon, I think, if I remember it correctly, that allows you to basically browse to the blockchain directly for NFTs, for assets, for tokens, for everything. So you don't need to go through a centralized service provider like Infura. I don't know if you have looked into it, Crow.
I love how everyone was like, who's going to tell him?
Yeah. We've been reading your quotes extensively. We've been having in-depth discussions, and I think at one point we would love to post questions to the Dero community as to how certain protocols could be built to accommodate various needs of, like, APIs, for example. We would love to have something that users can create programs and instead use blockchains like Dero to... in the end, it's the developer who should be free to use any API they want, right? So we would love to give them that freedom of choice, and then it's eventually up to the software developers and the users, of course, to select which network they want. Yeah, but we will get there. We do have questions for you, sir.
Well, I'm useless on the development front, but I do have a few ideas for protocols that kind of wrap into some of the ideas that you brought forward earlier. So we should definitely chat sometime.
Oh, we'd love that. We'd love that.
Asylum, did you have anything to add on the points of Infura and kind of that surrounding stuff? I'm always really curious on those areas, especially with Goman and Graviton, which I'm still wrapping my head around.
Well, a large portion of blockchain users think that the only way that you can use blockchain is if you get your data from someone to, and when you make all your data private, that whole dynamic changes quite a bit. So there's some tools being built in the ecosystem. Gnomon specifically is being built by Civilware. The whole point of it is to build a database for you to use with your own data locally, so you don't need to use trusted third parties like Infura. So that already exists and is being improved and iterated quite a bit lately, actually. So if you want to look into how that's working on the Dero side, just look into Gnomon, Gnomon.
And I also encourage anybody who's brought anything up including Secret. I know Secret doesn't want to show or anything, but if you want to like share your Discord or any links to anything you guys want to share, just reply to the Twitter thread for the space, because I'm sure anybody who's paying attention to that thread wants to see it.
Absolutely. And here, I guess I'll take that note to put a pin in it. It seems like we've gone on for about an hour and a half. I know some of you guys have dedicated this time, even with families to call. So I'd like to allow each and every one of you to get back to your personal lives, and maybe we can pick this up again sometime soon. Hopefully, there'll be next week there'll be another host then, and we'll come in and vibe and do it all over again. It was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate each of you.
Thank you, Waldo. I appreciate you hosting it and driving the conversation. I had a great time. I'm glad we had some people show up that don't normally come and talk. That was great. If anybody has any parting words.
Nice to see y'all come out. Let's make a regular thing out of this.
I probably won't be able to make this time often because it normally conflicts, but I will try to put up my own space and join any other peripheral spaces. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a lovely space. Thank you.
All right. I guess on that note, we'll just close it down for today. Next week, we'll have a different speaker. So we will, the way that we're going to be doing these is whoever hosts it is going to kind of pick the time. We're going to go for the Euro time zone next week. So hopefully we get some more people from Europe. We have a lot of people out there. So we'll sign off now. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Woo!
Later.
All right. All right, guys. Have a great day or night.